Welcome to Color Me Home, a podcast about paint
and decorating
and home improvement
and creative projects
and pretty much whatever else comes up in the conversation. I'm Dan.
And I'm Betsy. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a question that comes up in our stores all the time. How do I paint my basement walls?
See, basement walls often present homeowners with a number of unusual obstacles when it comes time to paint them. There can be moisture problems, the walls can be dirty, previous paint can be peeling. There are all kinds of situations that can come up.
All in all, it's often an entirely different project from rolling a new coat of paint on a living room wall. But it's still a project that anyone can tackle, and it's a project that will have a remarkable payoff down the road.
Now, there's a lot of stuff to cover today, so let's get started. Now, as we start this, we want to clarify that what we're generally addressing are those old Michigan basements.
Yes.
The ones that look kind of like medieval dungeons, the dark block walls.
No dragons.
No dragons, no. There's the bare concrete floor,
right.
The single light bulb,
Yes.
hanging from a wire, swinging from side to side, making those creepy shadows on the walls, that kind of basement.
Right.
The kind that I had at my first house.
Right, been there.
You've been there to my first house?
And that's your house.
That's creepy. You've now stepped into a whole level of creepiness that I've never been in.
Right. No, been there. I had a house like that.
Oh, gotcha.
And
You
there was a
weren't
creepy room off to the side that we kids never went in because it was that creepy. Yuck. Dirt floor and everything.
Yeah. Well, see, now
Ew.
I understand why our kids never wanted to go to the basement. They always talked about this creepy person, this creepy entity down there. Turns out it was you the whole time.
Exactly. But while that's primarily the focus of what we're going to talk about, everything we discuss today will apply to pretty much any basement where you have bare concrete, whether the walls are block or whether they're poured. Even if you have a finished lower level, chances are you've got a storage room or two with bare concrete walls.
All right. Now, as we mentioned in the intro, putting a new coat of paint on basement walls can make a tremendous improvement in your home. It can clean that dungeony room up, the scary room that nobody wants to go to, and make it, a usable space. My wife and I did this in our, the creepy house.
Right.
Or, no, it wasn't a creepy house. It was a creepy basement.
Creepy basement house.
When we moved in, definitely a creepy basement.
Right.
Cleaned it up, made a tremendous difference.
Right. But before you start rolling paint on, it's important to take care of a number of prep projects that are specific to basement spaces. And the first thing to check for is moisture.
Now, all right, take a look at the room. Most of the time, you're going to know that there's a moisture problem or a moisture issue going on. But you want to take a look, figure out what you've got going on, and then do what you can to determine the cause.
Right.
Now, a damp basement can be caused by any number of things. You can have moisture that's migrating through the foundation.
That's a common one, I think.
Right, and I'm not even talking about actual, water coming in, just moisture that comes through, makes the air damp.
Right.
You could have, literal water coming in. I've had that a few times, right?
Yep. I think everyone's had that at some point.
It's always fun when that happens.
Oh, it's a mess.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. Could be coming in from windows. Maybe there's a little gap around them or something. Moisture,
well, a lot of those old
water.
Windows are pretty ratty,
especially if they're
rotting.
wood.
Yeah.
There are a lot of wood windows in basements. And, wood loves moisture and lets moisture right through. So that could be where it's coming from. Check it out.
Could be coming from a leaky shower.
Yep.
Something like that. A tub that's leaking.
Yep.
Toilet that's leaking.
Ew.
I knew that was coming. Yeah, that's absolutely the opposite of cool.
Yeah.
When you find that, nobody wants to deal with that.
No one wants to clean it up either.
So you want to go around and try to determine these things, figure out what the cause is. Now, there are a number of ways to tell if you've got a moisture problem. Some of them are really obvious. You've got water puddling under where the toilet is, or the tub.
Obvious.
That's pretty obvious. If you've got standing water in the basement, that's
you
another
know
obvious.
You have a water problem.
Yeah, you go down there. We had this. There was a rainstorm 7-8 years ago, something like that, and we got, I forget how much rain, 6 inches of rain, 7 inches of rain.
Is that when everyone like in Allegan got flooded?
Everybody got flooded. I think the B93 birthday bash, there was flooding there. A whole bunch of cars were lost. Yep. It was a terrible experience for a lot of people.
Right.
Well, for us, we lost our van. We had a relatively new van. We had leased it. Got through the first 3 years of that.
And it was in your basement?
No.
Oh.
Driving home. We don't have a garage. So we just like to keep it in the basement.
Right.
Good idea, Betsy.
Yeah.
No, we lost it on the road, so I drove I was following cars. It was dark. We couldn't tell what was going on. And all of a sudden the van's floating.
Oh, that's
good.
bad.
The kids start screaming and crying. My wife, of course, she was the reason we were out in the first place. I didn't want to go out to whatever we were doing anyway.
Blame her.
So, of course, I did,
He's sorry.
I am so
for
sorry.
blaming you.
So we had a little bit of an argument. She opens the car door. She's just going to get out and walk for help. Well, water is running like a river past, so we're having
Right.
Because I didn't want... All I could imagine is she's going to take a step and go under and get stuck under the van.
Right.
And now I'm going to have to get my feet wet trying to save her, which I would have because I'm that much of a gentleman.
Nice save.
But anyway, so we get all of that. Finally, somebody helps us push our van off to the side, and we get home. All of this happened within 2 blocks of our house. That was the saddest part of it.
And
all.
now the van smells
was
funny because it's wet.
It was totaled.
Gross.
So then we get home, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm wearing Crocs. That's when they were really cool. They were really cool.
Were they
sometimes.
ever really cool?
Well, when I wore them, they looked awesome.
I only wear them in the garden. Thank you.
See, I was wearing them downstairs, and I had no thought about the fact that there was going to be all this standing water. Oh, yeah. I hit that. I was moving fast because I was frustrated about hit that. Next thing I knew, I'm laying on the ground.
You were swimming?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible. So I knew when I landed in the puddle of water that I had a moisture problem in the basement.
Crazy.
Not all of them are that obvious.
Right.
What other ones are there, Betsy?
There quite often are damp and musty smells. Just that funky smell that comes with a nasty,
I always figured
wet
that was
basement.
children. It's not just children that make that funny smell?
No.
It's a damp basement.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And you know that smell. Usually, it's
My
almost
son's
like
room
the
is a damp
mildewy
basement.
smell.
Yes, I know that
and it
smell.
just,
Not cool.
yeah.
So that's a good tip-off, of
Right.
course, that you've got a moisture issue in the basement.
Yep.
Mold and mildew on the walls,
Yep.
another obvious one.
Right.
Another one that's not quite as obvious, or at least not to everybody, in the industry that we work, the paint
Right.
industry, we run across this a fair amount, but not everybody does. But it's
Right.
this white, fluffy, powdery stuff that you see on the block walls.
Right.
Rising off of the walls. It looks like it's alive.
It's not baking soda.
No, it's not baking soda. It's called efflorescence, which is really fun to say, and I've been practicing.
I can tell.
Efflorescence. I didn't want to screw that up. I'm not screwing that up, am I?
I don't think so.
Efflorescence. Efflorescence.
I don't think I can ever say it correctly.
We should sing it. You sing. At some point, I've got to bring you in and make you sing. That'll be funny.
No.
Anyway, efflorescence is this white, fluffy, powdery stuff that shows up on the block walls. If you
Right.
go down into your basement, and you've got bare cement block walls.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be bare
It
cement.
doesn't-
It could be on painted surfaces.
Yeah,
or
because it
anything.
pushes the paint right back off
Right.
the walls. You'll see it forming underneath the paint.
Right.
I've seen that before.
What it is basically, I guess what causes it is that there's a water-soluble salt either in the ground around your foundation or in the blocks themselves of your
Right.
foundation.
Yep.
And when water moves through the ground or the cement of those blocks, it converts those salts into solution, and then it carries them through your foundation.
Right. The water will eventually evaporate, and when it does, it just leaves behind that white, fluffy, powdery, salty deposit that looks
Right.
kind of like fluffy baking soda on your wall.
So that's efflorescence.
Right.
And if you see that in your basement, the most important thing that it tells you is that you've got a water issue that you're going to have to deal with.
Right. So the first thing you want to do after you've decided that you have a moisture problem is obviously to deal with the moisture issues. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. Let's start with the inside of your house because you want to get it all dried out. Run a dehumidifier. That seems like the most obvious solution. 1, 2, 3, depending on how big your basement is. Get it in there, get that moisture out, pump the moisture into a sump or into a sink or wherever you can pump it out to get the moisture pumped out.
See, the first dehumidifier we had didn't have like a little outlet valve.
Oh,
that
it
could
just
run a
had the
hose.
bucket?
It was just a bucket.
Yeah.
So I'd constantly have to remember,
Yep.
which, of course, I'm sure
You
you can
didn't.
imagine how well I did at that. All of a sudden, you'd be sleeping and you'd wake up, in
Right.
the middle of the night. It's been 5 days.
And there's a
And
puddle.
look, there's a moisture problem. So anyway, one good thing is...
It's a contained moisture problem, right?
Well, it's still all over the floor because it would overflow, of course. But a lot of them will have an outlet where you can screw a hose into
Right.
that and just run it straight into a drain, so you don't have to remember anything.
Well, some of them have
Some
a
of them
little.
even-
Well, they have a float that turns them off. Some
that
of
would
them
have been
so
nice.
that once the bucket's full, it doesn't do anymore.
I might have possibly jury-rigged that because maybe it was stopping when
that.
Anyway, look for a good dehumidifier. That'll help take a lot of moisture out of the air.
Yep.
Another thing we did in our basement, because we did have moisture, we would get, whenever it would rain, not whenever, when we'd get really bad rain,
right,
we would start to notice water that would come in around the edges. It was an unfinished basement, so not a big deal,
right,
but it was a pain. But once we'd get that all cleaned up, now you'd have that smell to deal with.
Yeah.
You know? And so one of the things that was recommended is just cutting, we had air conditioning ducts. We just cut a few vents right into there to cycle the air through a little bit.
Right.
That helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. Try some new windows.
Exactly.
If you've got those old wood windows, which a lot of people have, get some new windows in there. You won't believe what a difference that makes.
No, we did that too. That was one of the next steps. And just being able to open them, because the old windows, they were terrible as it was, but we also couldn't open them.
Right. Vent your dryer outside. Make sure the vent is clear of all obstructions. Make sure that there are, no weeds and things directly in front of it that are going to push all that stuff back inside.
Or mounds and mounds of lint inside.
Right.
That's a fire hazard anyway.
Right. Or, a mouse nest or who knows what else. You never know.
Do they get in there?
I'm guessing they could.
Now I'm going to have to go through all of that stuff, or I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. Thanks a lot. I don't like.
No problem.
They don't scare me. They just gross me out. Just having that in my house.
Yeah.
We had them a couple years ago. I told you that, and I just wanted to burn the place down and start over. I don't know how you can live with them. Once they've been in there, it's like they've defiled it.
Well, when I was younger, we lived in that really old, creepy house with the really creepy basement, and there were always mice in there. I mean, it was a well over 100-year-old house. So
you grew up like Snow White, right? Is that the Disney who just could talk to all the little animals? The mice would just come and
all
talk
Disney
to you,
princesses could do that.
Animals.
Cinderella could do that. Cinderella had mice friends.
That's right, she did.
Yeah, and bird friends.
Is that how you grew up? Just like Cinderella?
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So another thing inside, because Betsy's taking us down memory lane here.
Right.
Is fix a leaky tub. Of course, obviously, those things. If you've got a leaky toilet, clean that, fix that. The shower, the tub. All of those things. Start inside, get these moisture issues cleaned up as best you can. And then once you've done that, and it shouldn't take as long as it took us to explain it.
No.
Once you've done the inside stuff, now you move outside.
Right.
And one of the very first things we did, again, to address our moisture problems, the house had no eaves trough on it. So all the water came straight off the roof, right onto the foundation, and eventually it didn't help the situation at all. So install eaves trough if you don't have it. And once I did that, the next lesson that I quickly learned is you have to clean the eaves trough out from time to time.
Well, but they have little guards that you can put over top of them.
That's for rich people or people who aren't cheap. I did not buy those guards. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you like going up there with all those nasty leaves and having to get them out?
I just didn't do it, which was my point. And so the eaves trough became utterly worthless.
Yep.
So now I get up there and I clean them on a regular basis. Probably should investigate some of the gutter guards that Betsy's talking about to keep the leaves out and all the
I don't think they're that
gunk.
Expensive. You can get just a little metal thing that goes over top, I think.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, check it out. So after you get the eaves troughs put up, then obviously the next thing you want to do is make sure you have downspouts, because otherwise the water's just going to pour over the top, and get those little extensions that make it so it flows way out into your yard, or channel it somewhere. I've seen where, they make a groove somewhere in the yard and put some, I don't know, gravel or whatever in it, special drainage things to make sure it drains away from your house and not into your basement.
Right. When we did this, again, that was another step we took. When it was really bad, I had an 8-foot, I think it was, just a eaves trough piece. That it didn't look good, but when it's pouring rain, I'd put that out there just to channel the water as far away from the house as possible.
Right.
Just to make sure it, of course, unfortunately, it put it directly at my neighbor's house. My neighbor's house.
Nice.
I feel so bad. But yeah, the first time that I noticed that is I was down. I just came up from the basement and told my wife, the basement's completely dry. And we looked out the window and saw the neighbor hauling a shop vac outside and dumping a bunch of water that they've been vacuuming. Wonder if it went there. But hey, it's war. You do what you got to do. we made sure we didn't do that again for our neighbors' sake.
Did you apologize?
Well, I wasn't technically sure it was my fault.
Oh, sure.
And we just kind of pretended
Right.
that we didn't know. She saw the eaves trough there, so
Right.
she could have challenged us. So make sure that you get the water at least 4 feet away from the house when it comes out.
Right.
Preferably 10 feet or so.
Yep. Not in your neighbor's basement.
No. Be more considerate.
Yes.
I wasn't inconsiderate. I just was not thinking. Yeah. Another thing is to make sure that the soil around your home slopes away from the house on all sides.
Right.
One final problem we had that I couldn't fix, I could have, but we moved.
Right.
The driveway actually had sunk just a little bit because the driveway ran along the entire side of the house.
Okay. Yep.
And it had sunken.
Yeah.
And it actually channeled
The water right
directly
to
to the basement. You want it to obviously
Go
move the other direction.
Right.
So you can do that, you might have to bring dirt in and things like that. It's a little more lengthy of a process, but just go around the house. If you have a moisture problem, these are some of the steps. Now there are bigger steps that you can take. You dig around the foundation, have somebody put waterproofer on the blocks. They can put drains and all of these things. We're not going to get into that. But these are some of the obvious things to just go around.
Right.
Make sure you've got them covered.
Yep.
Now, it sounds like a lot of work, but remember, eliminating the source of moisture is very important. Failing to do so is going to result not only in paint failure down the road, but also greater problems with a deteriorating foundation, with continual water in the basement.
Right.
It's just not worth it.
So do what you can to fix the source of the problems. And once you've done everything you can outside and inside, it's time to get to the actual work of prepping the walls for paint. And the place to start is to deal with any efflorescence that you might have on the walls.
Now, efflorescence, just remember...
Did I say the word right?
You did. You did very well.
you.
It's that white powdery stuff, the salt deposits.
Yes.
So there are a number of ways to deal with it.
Yep.
The internet is full of ideas.
Everybody's got
an idea. What we recommend, for this situation, we're talking basement specifically, basement blocks, and a homeowner doing the work.
Yes.
What we think would be the best all the way around is a wire brush, maybe a good stiff scrub brush, something like that, maybe even a push broom depending on where it's located or what you got going on. Scrub it really well.
Yep.
And then come behind with a shop vac and vacuum it off.
Yep. Vacuum the walls and the floor where it's all powdered off.
Get all the powder off.
Yep.
Now, another way, if that doesn't work or you want to do something a little more aggressive, you could get vinegar, which is a real mild acid, and a 50-50 mix of vinegar and water, something like that. You brush that onto these spots, scrub it around, and then rinse it well. Those would be a couple of ways to go.
I think it makes a bigger mess when you do that, though, because then you've got water with the powdery stuff.
That's
why seems like a big
I
mess.
like just the dry brushing it. But if it doesn't come off or something happens, here's another option. Now, what you'll want to be aware of is that there are a lot of recommendations out there on the internet suggesting that you use muriatic acid as a cleaner.
Yikes.
Now, this is effective, but it also can be significantly dangerous.
Yes.
There are corrosive fumes that can be dangerous to your health, as well as any exposed metal in your basement. See, muriatic acid is going to corrode metal quickly. The fumes can damage your furnace, your hot water heater, whatever else metal that you've got down there. So that's why for most situations, especially for this, a basement project done by homeowners.
Where it's very contained in usually fairly small spaces.
Right. And we got the old windows that we can't open. Just go with a wire brush and, the vacuum to get it all up.
Yeah.
Best way to go.
Yep, absolutely. Remove the efflorescence from the walls, and, that's the main point. Then once it's removed, you need to confirm that the walls are otherwise clean and sound. Remove all of the flaking and peeling paint that might be there. The efflorescence may have only been in certain spots, not all over. So any other peeling paint that you may have, make sure you scrape that all off.
That's got to come off. Sometimes people get the idea in their head that if they paint over,
it'll lock it back down.
It'll lock it back down. Doesn't work that way.
Nope.
All you're going to end up doing is taking...
Right.
The new paint will come right off.
Anything that can come off needs to come off. If it's even, just remotely loose, or if you see it starting to bubble, you need to take it off now, because otherwise it's just going to keep bubbling, and it's going to take all your new hard work off.
What's the best way to do that on a block wall, do you think? We didn't talk about this.
Scraping it?
Scraping it on a block wall, wire brush?
Wire brush, but I think one of those scrapers, like a putty knife kind of scraper. I mean, they're, like a 5-in-1 or something that have the scraper blade. that, any kind of scraper, just to scrape all that paint off.
Sure.
Wire brush works for the stuff that's already peeling, but if
Right.
you have that bubbling, you need to break
Under it.
through that and peel it off.
Okay.
Yep.
So you got that. Get all the loose, flaking, peeling paint off.
Yep.
And then you've got to remove dirt and grease and all of those other issues, surface
Right.
contaminants,
Yep.
if you see that. Spider webs, we always had huge, massive.
Spiders love the damp, and it's so disgusting.
Yeah, you.
Big you.
We recommend, we've got a number of different cleaners. Crud Cutter,
Yep.
which is fun to say. Crud Cutter.
Crud.
Crud Cutter. TSP, not nearly as fun to say as Crud Cutter.
No.
But both of those cleaners would work.
Right.
Spray 9, I'm not as familiar with that. That's one we stock.
We have people who use it, but I have never personally used it. I've always used TSP or Crud Cutter.
Yeah.
So
Basically, you just mix them out according to the label instructions,
Right.
depending on what product you use.
Yep.
Scrub them around on the wall. And the biggest step in any of them is to rinse it well.
right.
Very much. Anytime you use a cleaner in any paint project, even if any of the labels or because there are products that
No rinsing necessary.
right, they'll say that.
Yep.
Don't even pay an ounce of attention to that. Always
Right.
rinse well because you want to get any kind of residue that might have
Yep.
been created when you wash the walls.
Right.
Get that off.
Yep.
So rinse them well, whatever cleaner you use, Crud Cutter, TSP, Spray 9. Stop in at the store
Yep.
at RepcoLite
And make
we can
sure
help
you have a big bucket of clean water to rinse with, or swap it out, quite often.
Right.
Because otherwise you're
just
just putting that
recycling.
stuff back on the wall and you're really not rinsing it off. So
Exactly.
that's something people forget about that. Well, I had this little tiny bucket and I just, no.
by the few feet down, you're
Yeah.
just putting that dirty water
Right.
back on the wall. So,
Yep.
right, good point. Now, finally, once you've got the walls clean and rinsed, you want to check for evidence of mold or mildew. Now, if you discover any of it, you need to kill it
Right.
using a solution of 1 part bleach and 4 parts water. Now, ventilate the room well. Use safety goggles. You don't want it in your eyes. I shouldn't even laugh about
No.
that. I just picture myself. It burns. Trying to find the way out
Right.
of the basement with my eyes covered.
Right.
It's like, what is the movie? Alf? When Will
Yes,
Ferrell's in the bathroom
yes.
and the lady
Yeah.
tells him, cover your eyes.
and then he
covers
runs
and runs
into the
straight into the
wall.
wall. Great
That
scene.
is you.
It is me, just
Yep.
shorter. I'm shorter. So
Much.
ventilate well, use safety goggles, gloves, protective clothing. Another
Yes.
one, bleach will bleach.
Yes.
Brilliance, but
Yes.
true.
Crazy.
Wear the right stuff, and then
Right.
scrub the mold or mildew spots well.
Right.
Rinse them well afterwards with clean water following that bleach wash.
Right. When you finish this, it's time to let the walls dry. And when we say dry, completely dry. Bring in a dehumidifier or 2 or 3 or 4.
Which you have anyway.
borrow
from
your neighbors.
drying out your basement. Yes, borrow your neighbors.
And anyone else that you
Ask
can
them
happen to
first, unless you happen to
Yes.
live in their basement, like Betsy apparently
I didn't
spent
say
time
I
in
lived in
ours.
your basement.
Oh, just spent time there. Used our
Right.
dehumidifier.
find. Yes. Get out some fans, have everything pointed towards the walls and do what you can to quickly dry them out. So try to force them to get dry. And once they're completely dry, it's time to paint.
Now, all right, there are a number of possible scenarios that you could encounter when you're getting ready for paint. Now, let's first talk about a bare cinder block wall or poured concrete wall. And so that's the situation.
Right.
If the walls have never been painted, so they're bare,
Yep.
which I just said. I like to repeat myself to make
Yes,
sure. I
to
just
make
like
sure
the
everyone
sound of
knows.
my own voice. So if you've
Imagine
got bare
that.
concrete walls and you have no evidence of efflorescence or moisture of any kind.
Right.
So you haven't had, water coming in, dripping down the walls. Now,
Right.
maybe dampness in the air is one thing.
Right.
But I'm talking about water coming in on the wall, through the walls,
Right.
the efflorescence.
You
if
know,
you have no evidence of that, go ahead.
I have
You're
a
pointing
good
at me.
I have a good tip. Because if you think you have no moisture, but there's a
okay.
possibility that you do, take a piece of plastic, like
Oh, this is a good tip.
plastic sheeting or whatever, and tape all the way around. Get a decent size chunk, tape all the way around it to
Like a what? A 1 by 1, 1 foot by 1 foot, 2 foot
Yeah.
by 2 foot.
the bigger the better, but
Okay.
no need to do the whole wall, but just a decent chunk. Yeah. Probably 2 foot by 2 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Tape all the way around it. Tape that plastic to the wall.
Seal it
and,
tightly.
Yep, and see if you see moisture coming through. You'll
next
see
day
the
or so?
little you'll see the little droplets of moisture. And if you have that, then okay, maybe there's not a huge problem, but there's something going on. Because I've had people that, I don't think there's anything wrong, but I have this little spot in my basement, and when they put that up there, that's the spot that has moisture.
That's a great tip. You did good, Betsy. Way to go.
Thank you. Do I get a high five?
No, no, I'm not
fist
big
bump?
on that. Maybe that. We'll see.
All right.
So let's say you've done all of that and you determine that the bare block walls have no moisture problem. Right. And there's a number of basements, fair number, that have no moisture problems
They're
at all.
not creepy Michigan basements,
No, these
obviously.
are easy to paint then. All you need to do is just simply get a good acrylic latex paint.
Yep.
And brush a couple coats on, roll, whatever,
Yep.
a couple coats onto the wall. A couple recommendations just quickly. Budget conscious, we've got Recoat, recycled paint.
It's really good paint.
It's very
for
good
being
paint.
recycled paint.
Right. It's a very good product. We've had contractors use it, and they compare the application qualities to our Hallmark, which is our premium line.
Yep.
So it goes on like Hallmark. It covers very well.
Yep.
It's available in 20 coordinated colors.
Yep.
So the way the colors work is it's designed that you can pick any 2, any 3, any 4, and they all blend together.
Right.
So even if you're colorblind, you can come up with a good color scheme. So
right.
It's pretty awesome. And its prices out around
23 a gallon.
about 23 a gallon.
Yeah.
So pretty inexpensive, good coverage. Recoat recycled paint. That would be one option.
Yep.
If you want more color options or you want to go, there's no straight whites or pure whites
Right.
in the
It's
Recoat
kind of
line.
a creamy off-white color.
Right. That's the lightest
I
it
think
gets.
that's Magnolia.
Yes,
if I'm not
Magnolia, I
mistaken.
believe, is the lightest one. Carefree,
Yep.
or the RepcoLite Carefree line would be something that you could get that's completely
Right.
new. What would you call it? It's not new, but it's not
It's
recycled.
not recycled paint. It's all,
The brain.
raw
Yeah,
material.
it's all,
Yes.
yeah.
It's brand new
Brand
paint.
new paint.
Yes.
It's pretty awesome.
Yes.
But it's still economically priced. You
Yep.
can get it in any color. It is
Thousands
available
of
in
colors.
a pure white.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. That would be
Right.
another option.
Yeah.
And pretty much anything.
Yeah.
The Benjamin Moore line. It depends on what you want to
And
spend.
it's more sheens because
Right.
the
Recoat is
Recoat is
eggshell.
only eggshell, and the Carefree comes in a flat and eggshell satin semi-gloss, I believe.
Right. So that would be a bare concrete wall, no moisture.
Yep.
Just go straight to paint, brush and roll it, you're good to go.
Right.
Now let's talk about a different situation.
If the block walls have never been painted but did have efflorescence or any other obvious moisture issues after you put up your plastic, the path forward is a little different. We're strongly recommending that you opt for a waterproofing paint from Insulex called Water Block. Now, a water block is a paint designed specifically to waterproof interior or exterior masonry surfaces.
And most importantly, water block is only effective when it's applied over bare concrete.
Yep.
Now, if you apply it at this point over bare concrete, depending on the extent of the moisture issues in your home, you might completely fix the problem, or at the very least, you should dramatically reduce it.
Right.
However, if you decide that you don't want to apply the product now, and instead switch to a regular latex paint, your chance to address the problem is gone. You know, once you've got regular paint or any paint on the wall,
Right.
regular paint or any paint, once you've got paint on the wall, let's just go there, water
Right.
block isn't effective anymore.
Right. And you can't put it over, if there are only spots where that efflorescence was happening and there's still, you could put the water block on those spots
And
that
it'll
are down
prevent
to
the
bare.
water from coming through there.
Right.
It'll
But
just move it
everywhere
around.
else, it doesn't matter because it's supposed to soak into the block a little bit to help
To seal it. It'll
make it
prevent the moisture from
Right.
coming through. And again, it depends on how bad the situation is. I was just talking to somebody the other day whose in-laws had a water problem, a moderate problem. They'd get
Right.
water and heavy
Yep.
rains and stuff. It would come in around the corners, similar to the basement that I had. For the most part, it'd come in through the walls. They did everything, got all the, did all the outside stuff that we talked about to try to reduce the moisture. Still coming in, they painted the walls with water block. Now, it didn't completely remove or eliminate the water from coming in,
Right.
but it dramatically reduced it.
Right.
They to the point where they were extremely happy with the results.
Yeah.
So reduce the amount of water coming in, and then the other natural outflow is that it reduced the musty smell in the basement. So just doing that, the water block will help with that.
Right. And that's huge.
Exactly. Now, on the other hand, in my house, our first house, the water was coming in through the floors.
That happens to a lot of people. I've had a lot of people that have that problem. And sometimes it's just, a spot here and there, but other times it's the whole floor.
Yeah, we had 2 or 3 spots where it would just kind of come up.
Yeah.
And so the water block is not going to be helpful to me. I had a
No.
little bit coming in from the walls, but at that point, it's
Right.
just going to find its way to the floor. It's already
Yeah.
doing that anyway.
Right.
So in some cases, it's maybe not going to be effective. In other ones,
Right.
you might get, have really good results.
Right. It's not meant for floors.
Definitely not. Yeah,
let's
I'm
just
sorry.
clarify.
I was going to say that.
I'm guessing that's where you were going with that
just
floor
kinda,
thing. It's not
I
meant
got tired.
for floors.
Just went to the coffee.
Oh, tired of talking, are
Yeah,
you?
believe it or
There's
not.
a first time for everything. Today's a first. At any rate, there's too much information to try to convey about this product in a podcast. We'll put some information in the show notes, as we usually do, and you can download or print them. And we encourage you to stop out at any RepcoLite Port City Paints or Snyder Paints locations and explain your situation if you have questions. Tell us what you're working on and what you're experiencing, and we'll help you determine if water block is the fix for your particular situation.
All right. If you do all of that and you decide that water block is the right way to go for you, application is pretty straightforward.
Yep.
You need 2 coats on bare concrete walls. The best way to apply it, it's very thick.
Yes.
So your coverage is...
Like maybe 100 square feet per gallon.
Right in that
Usually
range.
you get, 350 to 400 out of a gallon. You're like 75 to 100.
All right. So definitely reduced
Yep.
square footage coverage with this product.
Right.
To apply it, stiff synthetic bristle brush, maybe a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch nap roller cover.
Yep.
If you do roll it, you got to make sure you back brush it
Yep.
to work it into
All the
all the
little
little
pores.
and voids and openings in the block.
Yep.
Apply the first coat. It's got to dry for about 4 hours.
At least.
At least 4 hours.
Depending on how humid and damp it is down there, I suppose.
Exactly. So before you recoat it,
Yep.
give it the right amount of time.
Right.
What
Flat
else do you want
finish.
to say? Oh, it's a flat finish, right?
Yep. So no sheen.
No sheen to it at all, which
Yep.
may or may not be something you want. Is it tintable? I was going to look that up.
I
We'll
don't
have to put that
know
in the
on
show
that.
notes.
But if you want a color, you can buy and just paint over top of it.
Right. It can
Buy
be
a
painted
good-
over.
Yeah. Most people don't want a flat in their basement.
right.
You want a
That's-
little bit of something that you can wipe off because basements
Even just
tend-
something that resists the moisture that
Right.
in the air or whatever.
Right.
If that's still persistent.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's just air moisture. It
Mm-hmm.
may not be a block problem moisture from the outside coming in. It's just the nature of basements. So,
anyway, you can top coat it with any paint.
yep. Recoat.
We'll put in the notes.
Carefree.
We'll dig into the notes and find out, or put in the notes whether it's tintable or not. I
Yeah.
thought it was, but I researched so many different of these
read
products
about
I
it,
can't
and
remember.
I don't remember what it
Boy,
said.
we did a really bad job on that one. Betsy, you dropped the ball. I'm very disappointed.
I'm pretty sure you were the
I'm
lead in
taking-
this one.
I'm taking back your fist bump.
Oh, okay then.
Now, we know that all of this sounds like a tremendous amount of work, and it can be, but we're taking the time to walk you through the best solution to a situation that's not ideal.
Right. It's important to understand that when you have bare walls, you've really got a blank slate, and you're at the foundational step in the project. Whatever you do next will determine how you'll deal with the situation from this point onward. If you have a water problem and don't put the water block on, but instead move to a regular paint, you'll never be able to go back and use the waterproofer later. So bear that in mind. What kind of
Right.
result do you want?
Now, on the other hand, sometimes you're just looking for an inexpensive fix,
I'm
right?
selling my house.
I am. And you're willing to deal with the consequences. Now,
Right.
I did that in my basement. I didn't think, as I mentioned, that the water block would really help my situation.
Right.
So I just went to finish paint.
Yep.
Got the walls cleaned, put the new paint on,
Yep.
and the room ended up looking remarkably better.
Right.
Much cleaner, much less medieval, much less scary, all of those
Right.
things. And in the end, when the water came back during a couple of those horrible rainstorms,
Yep.
what I ended up with was peeling in one 2x2, 2 foot by
Right.
2 foot section of the wall.
Yep.
The paint peeled.
Right.
In the whole basement, I had a problem there. No big deal. I could
Nothing
live
you
with
can't
that.
fix.
Nothing you can't fix.
So it's all about what your expectations are and what you feel is acceptable and unacceptable. In either case, the best option might be for you to stop by any of our stores and explain your exact situation. We'll help you make the best decision based on what you want to spend, what work you want to do, and what results you want to see. Or feel free to email Dan and I at colormehome@repcolite.com. We will gladly help you find a solution.
We will, because we're pretty decent like that.
Yeah, we answer email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, one last situation that we're going to talk about would be previously painted walls. Walls that have paint on them,
Yep.
and really at this point, we're not even concerned whether they had a moisture issue or not for what we're going to recommend. Because hopefully you've dealt with that as best you can. But since they have paint on them, there's no point in using the water block anymore.
Nope. Won't do you any good. Just make sure the walls are dry, clean, and dull.
That sounds like you. Is that what you were going to say?
I am very clean. Thank you for noticing.
And dull and dry.
Yep, I am dry today. How about you?
I am sweating like crazy. It's so hot.
Insert appropriate you here. It is warm in here today.
Yes.
A little humid.
We have a moisture problem right here, localized in my chair.
That is really you. Anyway, getting back to basements. A lot of people have really, really shiny paint in their basements, like semi-gloss or high gloss, and that needs to be dulled down before you can paint over it. So
it'll just peel otherwise. The new paint will peel right off.
Yep. So before you paint over that, you need to dull down that surface. Use a deglosser, an abrasive pad, use them in combination, whatever will take that sheen down, because otherwise your new paint is just going to scrape right off when you brush against it.
Right. Once you've got it dull and dry and clean, then really any of the paints that we recommended earlier will work.
Right.
Now, all right, that's all there's time for today. We know the topic was dense and that we covered a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time.
Relatively.
But we also hope that it was informative for anyone who's got an old basement that could use a facelift. Now, it may sound like a complicated process, but it's really not. If you follow the steps and the tips that we discussed, it should go relatively smoothly, and the end results will be worth all the work.
And your dragons will be banished forever.
Banished forever.
Definitely. And remember, if you have any questions about anything we discussed, or if you have any comments or suggestions for another topic Dan and I can discuss, please email us at colormehome@repcolite.com. Emails are awesome. We're getting some, but we obviously always want more. So send us an email.
Like more.
Yeah, exactly. Email us a question, comment, and we'll send you a coupon for a free gallon of any Benjamin Moore or RepcoLite paint. All for asking a question. Getting free stuff doesn't get any easier than that.
And don't forget, our show notes for this episode, as well as links to all of our past shows, are all available at RepcoLite.com. Just click the Color Me Home link on the homepage and then subscribe to our podcast via RSS feed or now on iTunes. I don't even need to say now anymore. It's just been a while since it's been on iTunes. Right. We're veterans on iTunes. Kind of. Let's just say that. You can find it on iTunes. Subscribe today, and you'll never miss another episode. So until next time, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Color Me Home, brought to you by RepcoLite Paints. Everything discussed in this episode can be found in our show notes at RepcoLite.com. Just click the Color Me Home tab on the home page. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can contact Betsy and Dan by email. The address is colormehome@repcolite.com. That's colormehome@repcolite.com.